Thank you very much. Okay, welcome everyone. For those of you that just popped on, we've asked everyone to join us on screen just for the first couple minutes of this so we can all delight in the joys of being in community with each other. My name is Liz Thompson, and I would like to welcome you all to our Cafe Conversation. The Cafe Conversations are a component of the Cleveland Avenue Foundation for Education, where we like to bring together really amazing leaders and topic experts on relevant issues to the subject of education in the broadest possible terms. We decided to do this many years ago when we realized that not enough people were really coming together to understand some of the issues in education, both early education, high school education, higher education, career attainment. There were so many issues out there that people needed a broader understanding of. We decided to start convening people in order to share this type of information. That brings us to our topic today, which is the talent economy. I am pleased to be joined by David Cohen, who's the vice president at LinkedIn. But before I go into David's background, I just want to chat a little bit about the internship program that we have, which is what prompted us to have this conversation in the first place. We started our internship program 4 years ago when we realized that right now, an internship, once you're in college, has almost become like a high school diploma. It is absolutely required in order to achieve the goals that our young people want to achieve by going to college. It was no longer a nice thing to have. It was an absolute must-have in order to get that significant first job out of college. And so we decided we wanted to participate and have our own internship program. Then a secondary reason for us having the internship program was because we wanted to see diversification of the philanthropic industry. You know, so many foundations that are doing amazing work don't have the kind of diversity that we want to see and that we know we need to have in order to understand the issues that we're all trying to solve. And so we decided, why don't we create a particular vertical for young people to become introduced to the world of philanthropy. And so we launched our Citywide Foundation Internship Program, and we now have 40 young people, many of which are on the call today. And for that reason, I'm going to ask our interns to please go in, change your name designation so that we know your name and the fact that you are an intern, so that we can pay tribute to you and all of the wonderful experiences you are having this summer in your respective foundations. Okay, with that, I'm now going to ask all of you to please go off of video and switch to speaker mode so that you can see David Cohen, who I am absolutely delighted is joining us today. David is a business leader, a father, husband, teacher, mentor, and permanently curious learner, my favorite part of all. He leads LinkedIn's talent solutions business in North America, which helps companies of all sizes and industries develop their talent strategies, recruit, and engage talent. In this role, he oversees a multi-billion-dollar business and a team of over 1,000 employees that are laser focused on helping customers navigate this talent economy. Let me share a little bit more about David. In 2008, he opened LinkedIn's Chicago office, and he was one of the company's first 250 employees. In 2012, David moved to London, where he was responsible for the talent solutions business in the UK, Northern Europe, and emerging markets in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. He returned to Chicago in 2015 to take on this current role, and oh, by the way, to renovate his 95-year-old house at the same time. Before joining LinkedIn, David served as a management consultant for Accenture, and he worked with J.B. Pritzker as a venture capital investor. He's also started his own management consulting firm and investment company. He received his BA in psychology from Emory and his MBA in strategy, marketing, and entrepreneurship from Kellogg. He lives in the northern suburbs of Chicago with his dazzling wife and his three delightful children. He said his three mostly delightful children, but we're going to go with his three delightful children. So please join me in welcoming David to our conversation today. David, thank you so much for joining us. I couldn't be more pleased to have you with us.
Thank you, Liz. I am honored and delighted to be with you. And thank you for all the flattering words.
Thank you. I'm going to ask all of our participants to please go on mute. Thank you so much. And David, I'm going to now turn it over to you. Can you start off by helping us understand just exactly where we are with the labor markets? What are we seeing right now?
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, I've been getting to know Liz a little bit. She and I both have the honor of serving on the Brave in Chicago board. And it's been just great to talk about talent. It's great to talk about equity in the workplace. And I am a self-proclaimed talent nerd. So I get really, really geeked out by a bunch of this stuff. So I'd love to, if it's okay with you, Liz, I'd love to share some content with the group here.
That would
just
be
to give
great.
everybody some perspective on the world, the way that I see it.
Thank you.
And so let's see, can you all see my screen right now?
We can.
Great, let me go into presentation mode here. So the talent world had been doing well for a while. And then this thing called the pandemic hit us about a year and a half ago. What has happened, partly due to the pandemic and partly because it was happening already, is the world is shifting to very automated and digitally transformed world. World Economic Forum has said that as a result, partly due to the pandemic, that we are going to probably displace 85 million jobs and create 97 million new jobs in the next 5 years. It's an astonishing shift in what's happening within the labor market right now. And that has a bunch of implications for kind of what we need to do, both as people who are engaged in the workforce and people who are employing. So what's going on right now? I'm sure many of you have been looking at the headlines. There are about little over 9 million current job openings, but there are also about 9.5 million unemployed workers nationwide. So you would think, hey, isn't that simple? You know, there's about as many unemployed people as there are job openings. Why aren't we just filling all these gaps? And what's really taking place is the talent market is hot, but it's not hot for the types of people that a lot of employers are looking for right now. And that's due to three primary factors. One is digital transformation. So many companies that have traditionally been in an analog world, you think about manufacturing, you think about restaurants, you think about transportation and logistics, even hospitality, which had survived with bricks and mortar for years. They are all now navigating their way into a digital economy. So that's the digital transformation element. Then you have workplace transformation. More people now than ever are working remotely that have to use Zoom to conduct meetings, to stay close to one another, using other kind of online services or remote types of working environments in order to do their jobs. And then you have workforce transformation. The number of skills that we now need to have in the adaptation of our skills and our expertise is moving at a much faster rate than it ever has before. And so collectively, what this is doing is it's creating a skills shortage in the world. But at the same time, according to Microsoft, 40% of people who are employed are thinking about leaving their current job. And so if you're an employer right now, you're probably scratching your head saying, what would happen if 40% of my workforce suddenly turned in their resignation over the next 12 months or so? Because that's essentially what we think is happening right now. So you combine all that stuff together and you kind of have this very strange and unusual picture that we've never really seen before. So I'll pause there. That's kind of like the big picture of what's going on right now, Liz.
Yeah, so David, 40%, a full 40% of employees are thinking about changing their job in some way?
Yes, they are either passively open to new opportunities or they're actively looking for new jobs.
Okay, that's a bigger number than I would have anticipated. David, I'll ask you to continue on from there.
Great, great. So this is where we get into a little audience participation. So one of the other things that's happening is people are interested in remote work. So what we're going to do is, if at the top of your screen, you'll see a little button that says annotate. Click on that button.
Some of us might first have to go to a little menu drop-down bar that says view options. If you have that at the top of your screen, first click that, view options, and then scroll down to annotate.
And then once you're there, click the text icon. So here's our first quiz of the day. If you found your way to annotate and then the text button, type in on the screen right now what you believe the increase in remote job postings saying that it's okay to work remotely. What has that increased since February of 2020 in percentage terms? I see 100%, 90%, 85%, 45%, 75%, 120%, 125%. Love this. All right. So everyone's figured out the annotate button. That's
yeah,
good.
I love that.
So you're all way low. Great guesses, but the answer is 440%. Get to that next slide. There we go. 440% increase in the number of jobs that are listed as remote optional or remote permanent. And so this is part of that workplace transformation that I was referring to earlier, is that we're seeing that there's kind of a migration that's taking place right now where the workforce is becoming more and more remote. And the idea of people working more remotely and being potentially not in an office is going to only increase over time. I think this is not just pandemic related. This is truly a secular shift that's taking place in the economy right now. And it's something that as employers and people who are focused on the labor markets are acutely interested, not only in what that means for remote work, but what does it mean for skills? And what does it mean for especially junior workers who are accustomed to being around their managers or their mentors or people who they can sit down in a cafe with and have a coffee and learn more about their jobs? That's creating a really interesting disparity right now, and one that we're going to have to grapple with probably over, many, many years from now. So it's not just those who are, I'm going to clear the board here, not just those who are trying to employ people remotely, but what about people who are applying for those remote jobs? The increase in those who are applying on percentage terms for jobs that are listed as remote, permanent, or optional since February of 2020. Feel free to hit that text icon again and type in your answer.
Repeat that question one more time, David.
The percentage of people applying to jobs that are listed as remote. How much have applications increased over the last year and a half? All right, they're on to us now.
I love it.
600%, 245%, 76%. Okay, 1,000%. Thank you, Rhonda. You're going to make this a lot less interesting now. So yes, you're getting there. People who are interested in applying to those remote jobs are up 350%. So for every one person who asked to be a remote worker a year and a half ago, there are now 3.5 people that are applying for that same job. And so that means a couple things. Number one, I think there's a supply and demand kind of equilibrium here. And that also means that people are going to start probably working in different places than where we're used to them working. And so you hear people kind of moving out of some of the more expensive places to live if they have the option to do so. The great exodus that's happening right now in California is sorry, I just got an update installation request. No, thank you. It was going to reboot my computer. I'm glad I was able to exit that one. But people are moving away from the coasts. They're moving away from some of the more expensive locations if they can, because they now have more options than they ever did before. And so, these trends increase in the, companies that are figuring out how to maintain remote work, those that are people who are looking at jobs that are listed as remote, and then those who are applying to jobs that are remote. All these numbers are on the rise and will likely continue to be so for the foreseeable future. So what does it all mean? It means that what we saw in the last 5 years in terms of jobs and skills, these are all changing as well. So 5 years ago and over the last 5 years, you saw a lot of focus on technical skills and a lot of focus on kind of software development, sales development, customer success. Those were the fastest growing jobs. You look back just over the last year and a half, and while you still see some of those technical skills, we're also seeing more jobs that look like the evolution of some traditional jobs. You know, obviously, healthcare obviously is a big jump in what we need right now in the workplace. Loan experts, mortgage experts, people are focused on e-commerce. Diversity is a big, is really trending very hot right now in terms of jobs that are on the rise. And so lots of new skills that are being demanded in the workplace, and lots of new jobs that are opening that are a little bit different than what we had before. And that's what's creating a lot of that disparity between, you know, the number of job openings and the number of unemployed people, is that the job market is rapidly shifting. And so the question is, like, how do we get people there? You know, and if there just is a shortage of labor, you know, how are we going to help people get where they need to go? Well, one of the great criticisms for all the Gen Zers on the call, you know, us older folk have been accused of, you know, saying that this is a generation that's lazy, it doesn't want to work hard, it's not interested in learning, you know, and like, what's going on with this generation? And the fact is, that's all totally untrue. In fact, I think that the emerging people in the workforce right now are super focused on their careers. They're super focused on getting the skills that they need. In fact, when we went to a remote workplace, the hours of online learning content jumped like we've never seen a jump like this before. And it's proof that, you know, the Gen Z, the kind of emerging generation of talent right now that's in the workplace and joining the workplace, is very aware of what it's going to take for them to be successful. And it's going to take constantly learning, constantly evolving, and figuring out how to get educated. So we're going to have to blend all these various elements, and it's not easy for us to do this. And so, you know, a lot of employers have figured out, hey, we have to invest in our talent. We have to develop their skills. And that's good news for a number of fronts. Number one is that this emerging talent is going to get much more educated by their own employers. This is going to happen on the job. It's going to happen through online training. It's going to happen through mentorship and sponsorship. But it's also going to pay massive dividends, because people who feel like they're being invested in by their employers, when they have more skills, when they're being given opportunities to learn, when they're being given opportunities to take on new jobs and take on new responsibilities, they stay almost twice as long as those who aren't invested in by their employers. So if you're a manager, if you're a leader right now, one of the best things that you can do is to invest in your talent. It gives employees a sense that you care about them. It lets them know that you're interested in their career development, and they're going to stick around a lot longer if you do that. So that's the big kind of picture. And that's what we need to know about internal mobility.
So David, the chat box is blowing up. I know sometimes it's hard for the person that's presenting to see just all of the activity that's going on, but we have a ton of questions in the chat box, and I'm going to do something a little different here. And that is, I'm going to call on a couple folks to ask the question that they've popped in the chat box. And the first person I'm going to call up to the stage is Mira. Mira has asked us a question that kind of sets a context for something. So Mira, can you pop on and ask your question?
Absolutely. Thanks so much, David. This is really terrific data and information. And as a fellow talent nerd, I'm here for it. So thank you for that. I had asked the question about what this data looks like and what these trends look like specifically in the social sector. I think that there's some nuance with just the way that services are delivered or have traditionally been delivered in the sector, and the kind of shifts that folks have made in the last year, which has been largely out of necessity. And there's, I think, a lot of questions about whether those shifts are going to stay or should stay. So I'm curious about what the data says about the social sector in particular.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mira. I haven't broken it down by social sector in particular, but we are seeing some universally consistent trends. Almost all sectors are starting to really kind of converge and look similarly. What had happened at the beginning of the pandemic was, you saw a massive labor shift in terms of layoffs and people who were being asked to kind of press pause on their employment. And since then, pretty much every sector has kind of bounced back. However, the talent hasn't responded the way that I think a lot of employers have expected them to respond. So, if you were a big hotel chain and you laid off or furloughed, 50% of your workforce, you were hoping that 50% of your workforce started to come back at this point. That's not happening. It's not happening the way that employers want to. In fact, the New York Times actually just did a really interesting piece on the Daily where they were talking about how, restaurant owners are having a hard time just getting, sous chefs. And what used to be a $12 an hour job is now over $20 an hour job because they literally just can't find people to do it. And so, these types of trends, not only in terms of getting people back to work and what that's going to do from a job pay perspective, but also the shift in terms of the skills that they're going to need, I think that's largely universal.
Thank you for the question, Mira. Thank you so much. Next up, I'm going to call on Lester Mckeever. Lester, can you put your video on and ask your question of David? And your sound.
Yeah, you can hear me, but
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, anyway, my question as I try to bring up my picture is simply, are those statistics across representing all the sectors in the universe, or are they predominantly the service sector?
It's a great question, Lester. Thanks for asking. It's looking like it's fairly consistent across all sectors. There may be some exceptions, and I think for a large part, those are going to be kind of temporary blips, especially when it comes to travel, hospitality, airlines, which airlines are kind of bouncing back right now as well. We saw a huge drop off in automotive at the beginning of the pandemic. And automotive is not only bouncing back incredibly strong, but also in ways that we never predicted. Really good example is I was talking to Ford not long ago, and Ford, their new F-150 truck, which is the best-selling truck in North America, has 150 lines of code, 150 million lines of code to power one Ford F-150 truck. There's so much there's so much technology in that truck that you could actually use it as a backup generator for your house if the power goes out. And so, Ford's traditional automotive engineers, they are disappearing right now. And now it's moving to, technology engineers, software engineers, data scientists. So the jobs are coming back, but they're coming back in different ways than we've seen in the past. And I think that kind of secular shift based partly on digital transformation, that's here to stay. And I think it's largely sector agnostic.
Thank you, Lester.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the last question we'll take from this particular segment, I'm going to ask for one of our interns to come on and ask his question. Alex, can you join us and ask your question of David? Alex Moreno?
Yes. Hello, David. Pleasure to be on this meeting, by the way. Post-COVID, if the workforce has switched to a majority online, do you believe that schools will also switch their students to majority online since they're trying to teach individuals how to succeed in the workforce?
Alex, thank you for that question. That is, I think, something that the academic world is really trying to figure out right now. I don't believe that they have an answer, but one of the things that we're starting to see, which I think is probably here to stay, is that for those who do go to secondary and tertiary universities, you're probably going to see more of a blend. I think that there will be some combination of classroom learning, potentially remote learning, and then also online learning. And so, you know, what we sell a product at LinkedIn called LinkedIn Learning, and it's an online learning platform, you know, 15,000 titles, courses essentially. And one of our biggest customer sectors is the academic world. You know, I think like academia is realizing that skills are shifting so quickly that it's hard to actually put courseware together to meet the demands of what the labor market really requires. And a good example of this is, you know, software engineers, for example. When you learn a new language as a software engineer, that language could be gone. I mean, completely unused 18 months from the point after you learn it. And so if you're a university, you're not used to really creating coursework that has to be completely refreshed every 18 months. You know, you generally build coursework that goes, you know, potentially decades. And so there will have to be some combination of, you know, this like rapid shift in skill development that I think people are looking for universities in order to satisfy, in addition to the traditional coursework and courseware that they're used to delivering to their students. And yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting emerging space.
Thank you for that question, Alex. And let's pivot back, David. When we took a break for questions, you were talking about this whole internal mobility notion and skill development. Can you pick up from where you left off and take us through that?
I sure can. Let me see if I can get my screen back up here. Hang on a sec.
I love our audience's patience with our use of technology and our community sharing and our engagement with the audience. We have the best colleagues and the best community in the world. Thank you, everyone, for going with us on this journey.
I love it. I love it. Am I back up here? Can you see my screen?
You are. Absolutely.
Well, one of the most interesting insights that we've discovered over the past 5 years at LinkedIn is this idea of, you know, hey, we know that we're not going to satisfy all of the demands that employers have when it comes to, you know, the growth in jobs and the new economy based on just skill development. There is going to have to be some hiring that's involved. And so we looked into, we have a great product at LinkedIn, which is just a LinkedIn job. It's one of our best selling products. And when you go on a LinkedIn and you look at a job, you'll often be asked if you want to be referred, if there's somebody at this company that can refer you to this job. And that's based on your connections, you know, the first degree connections that you have on LinkedIn. If you are referred by someone who's a current employee at the company, you're 9 times more likely to get hired than someone who doesn't have connections. And that's great. We are helping our customers, you know, helping them hire people at a faster rate. They felt good about the hires that they were getting. The network effect of LinkedIn was working really well. But then we paused and we asked ourselves a question, which was, what if you don't have a great network? What happens if you're not someone who has connections at the company that you want to work for? Well, what's happened is we've kind of put you at a material disadvantage relative to people who have a better network. So then we took it one step further and we asked ourselves, how do people get good networks? And the answer is really interesting. The answer is there are 3 kind of components that you may have no control over that will determine how strong your network is. And that will lead you to being able to kind of refer your way into that job that you really want. The first is the neighborhood where you grew up. If you grew up in an affluent neighborhood, which is defined as the average income, family income is $100,000 a year or more, it turns out you're 3 times more likely to have a good network than someone who came from a less affluent neighborhood. The second element, that's, by the way, really powerful. 3 times more likely if you came from an affluent neighborhood that you have a strong network. The second is where you went to school. If you went to a strong university with a good brand, then you're 2 times more likely than one of your peers to have a network that can help you land that job. And the third element is where are you doing your jobs? Where did you spend your time in your first couple of jobs? Maybe while you were at university, maybe after university. Turns out that if you had, a good job, one where you could build a lot of network connections and that had a strong brand, you were also 2 times more likely than your peers in order to have that network that's going to help you land that job through a referral. These 3 components are not, they are not isolated. So you're 3 times more likely if you came from the affluent neighborhood to help you land that job. 2 times more likely if you went to the right university, I'm using that in air quotes, and 2 times more likely if you got that great first job. So collectively, that means you're 12 times more likely. These are multiplicative effects. And we think that that's really unfair. And I think personally that that's something that we as a society need to figure out how to course correct. And so what we're trying to do right now is help bridge the gap and really help both employers understand that if they're going to build truly diverse and equitable employment communities, then they have to get over not only their biases against internal referrals, but also help reach out to marginalized communities and communities who are disadvantaged just because of where they came from and the opportunities that they had. Because we know that when we get people in the right jobs, they're going to thrive, and that's going to have nothing to do with their network. It's only going to have to do with the opportunities that they're given, how much they invest in themselves, and how much their employer invests in them. And that's the idea behind the network gap. I think that is an opportunity that absolutely can be addressed by employers globally. And it's one that's actually going to, if we get it right, it's going to resolve the labor market issues that we're seeing right now. And so I think it's a fascinating, fascinating topic, and one we're going to be continuing to study for probably many years at LinkedIn. So let me unwind this slide. And with that, Liz, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. Wow. We can go way deep on that. I just want to double click. I know you took the slides down, but Dawn, one of our amazing members of the Cafe Group team, captured it in the chat. So you have 3 times the advantage based on the neighborhood you grew up in, if it's an affluent neighborhood. You have 2 times the advantage based on the university you went to, if it's one of the right universities, air quotes, and 2 times the advantage based on the employer's brand recognition. And so if you have none of those things working on your behalf, you are already 12 times less likely to get that next significant job that others might get ahead of you, even though you might be infinitely more qualified based on your skills and your talent. David, is that what I just heard you say?
You got it exactly right, Liz. Okay. And so, I am actually a product of this kind of problem that exists right now in society. I did grow up in an affluent neighborhood. I was afforded the opportunity to go to a great name brand university. And because of the connections that I made, both through my family, my home, university, I've gotten, the jobs that I've wanted in life. And it's an incredible privilege, and one that I don't take very lightly. But what I want to do is I want to break down those walls, and I want to make sure that we're giving the same opportunity to people who are working much, much harder than I ever did in order to prove themselves and to get the skills that they need in order to be successful.
That is excellent. David, I'm going to now go back to our chat where the questions are again blowing up in the chat. I'm going to ask dear friend and colleague, Darren Reesberg. Darren, can you turn your video on and pose the question to David that you put in the chat box?
Sure, Liz. Thank you. And it's a real pleasure to be here. David, this is excellent content. And it just, you know, I'm an avid user of LinkedIn. And just to know all of the thought that is going into all of the work that you do is really exciting. I'll look at it in a whole different way. One question that I had here was just trying to understand, given all you've talked about in terms of the disadvantages that some you know, individuals, depending on where they're from, et cetera, have, whether LinkedIn has thought about or actually waded into the space of trying to provide internship link ups to high school students or college students and linking them up with some of the companies that you work with, and if so, how that's gone.
Absolutely. Yeah. Darren, thanks for the question. We take this incredibly seriously. You know, we are, we're a big company, not only a big company in its own right, big tech company, but also we are a subsidiary of Microsoft, one of the two largest companies in the world. And so we do partner with a number of organizations. We have a partnership with Urban Alliance, which helps high school students find their kind of first job and do internships and get partnered with sponsors and mentors. And that Urban Alliance is a fantastic partnership. And then we take it through college as well. We work with, I mentioned that I'm spending time with Braven, and I saw Ami is on the line here as well. And Braven is doing incredible things right now to try and bridge those gaps and create opportunities and really, you know, prepare underrepresented people and people who come from disadvantaged backgrounds to be prepared for those first jobs out of school. And not only that, but we think that we have started to crack the code, and I say that loosely because I think there is a model on like sponsorship and investment that we can start to take out to our customers, LinkedIn customers, who, you know, they buy a lot of technology from us, but they're also buying kind of best practices, so to speak. And so one of the things that we're trying to help them do and learn from them, by the way, there are some companies that are doing wonderful things in this area right now, is, you know, I think that there's a realization that this is going to be a collective effort, that we need to not only bridge the gap, but we need to also like develop the next generation of workers, because right now baby boomers are retiring at a rate of something like 10,000 a day in the United States, and we just don't have enough talent to replace them. And so the only way that's going to happen is if we reach beyond the traditional kind of spheres where we've traditionally reached for talent, and we bring many more people into the labor economies. So yeah, this is kind of a very central focus for us, but it's an everyone thing. And so this is why I have conversations like this, try and inspire you, Darren, and all the folks that you work with.
Thanks so much, David.
Thanks, Darren. And what an amazing guy Darren is as well. There's an interesting question from Sarah Bogan. Sarah, can you join us on screen and ask your question? I thought it was really intriguing.
Yeah, I was wondering if there was a way for technology or LinkedIn, I'm not sure what the terminology is, to overcorrect this, to intentionally connect the individuals who are 12 times behind with companies in a way that doesn't make it seem like it's a handout just because you didn't have these opportunities, but that we're recognizing that wealth of talent that's just not being reached. So yeah, just wondering if there's a way for tech to do that.
Sarah, that is a wonderful question, and I'm so glad you asked it. Yeah, there is a way of doing this, and the way that we believe that we're going to do it is to literally go out and try and resolve the network gap one person at a time. Part of that we're going to do through, we offer free subscriptions, free premium memberships to LinkedIn. So that helps people get noticed by employers faster. It puts you up at the top of the search when recruiters are doing their jobs. It gives you access to LinkedIn Learning so you can develop your skills. And it gives you the opportunity to kind of see and network with people who you'd be limited by without that membership. And I noticed that Lisa, who is one of my colleagues, Lisa Barlow, put in the chat that, yes, LinkedIn employees do have some free memberships that we can give out. And we're limited. We don't have an unlimited number of these, but we are all encouraged. I encourage my team, my executive team encourages the whole company to reach out to people who look like they don't have strong networks and give them those upgraded premium memberships and help them to be able to, develop their network and develop their skills at the same time. But it's early stage. Again, this is going to require more than just LinkedIn in order to fix the challenges that have been created truly over centuries. It's going to require that we work with groups like this one, that Braven and other wonderful organizations are able to bridge the gap and really just perpetuate like the acceleration of bringing more people into the workforce, but also making sure that the network gap gets resolved over time. We're on the way, we're on the path, but it is still certainly early days and we've got some high hurdles before we're able to do it.
Thank you so much.
Amazing question, Sarah. Thank you so much. Shelley Davis also had an interesting question representing a different segment of the population. Shelley, can you share your question with us?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So my question is, I recognize there are lots of interns on the call, and I think these questions about entering your career is really important. And I'm the new CEO of the Coleman Foundation, so I'm happily in place. Thank you. But I would say that I think that these biases even carry over with executive recruiters when folks are mid-career and senior and seeking more senior level roles. And so I'm wondering if there's any way to influence that segment, because I definitely, there's research out there, especially with women of color leaders or leaders of color who have really hit walls when working with executive recruiters or getting executive recruiters' attention. And is there a way to use LinkedIn either to our advantage or as a tool to be supportive? Thank you.
Shelley, congratulations on the role. So delighted that you have that wonderful responsibility. We are all going to be better for it. And thank you for the question. Yes, there are a lot of both conscious and unconscious biases that exist within the recruiting world. We are extremely aware of how that works. If you look at kind of how recruiters, executive recruiters, as well as staffing firms and just talent acquisition professionals in general use LinkedIn, they do have a bias towards reaching out to people with less ethnic sounding names, less like Black, traditionally Black names, or those that would be interpreted as Black, less Latinx outreach. And that's problematic for all the reasons that we can all imagine. And so one of the things that we have the ability to do, that employers have the ability to do, is we can turn off names and photos from a recruiter's kind of LinkedIn software experience. And so what that does is it shows them the LinkedIn profile, but with the name removed and with profile photo removed. And that doesn't solve the problem, but it certainly goes a long way in terms of just making sure that the outreach is happening with the people who deserve to be reached out to, I should say. And so that's one thing that we're doing. I think, the second thing is there's a big movement right now that we're calling, skills, not degrees, because, if we're really moving towards creating an equitable marketplace and great diverse teams across the board, it's not really where you went to school that's going to determine whether you're successful. It's about the skills that you have and the experience that you have. And so we're training the algorithms, the job algorithms, to look for skills instead of, again, like the university that you went to or the name of the company that you've been working for a long time. And so these are all different kind of efforts that we have that are going to, over time, I think, start to break down some of those barriers and address some of the conscious and unconscious biases that exist. But it's not everything. I mean, there's going to be a lot of work involved in really getting us to a place where we can say the job seeking experience and the hiring experience is truly fair and equitable. And, you know, talking to recruiters, I think most recruiters would tell you that they really want to solve this problem. Not everyone, of course, you know, and you still hear microaggressions in some of the conversations that we have with employers. But I think broadly speaking, the talent world is starting to wake up to the idea that diverse teams win and diverse teams are more successful than the alternative. And so I'm optimistic. I'm a born optimist, but I am optimistic that we're making progress here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Shelley, for asking that. And one last question for this segment, and I'm going to apologize because I'm not exactly clear on the pronunciation, but I think it's Xiao Mei from the Chicago Community Trust. Can you join us on screen and ask your question, please?
Yes, hi, my name is Xiao Mei. I just made the comment about how my name itself is kind of a barrier because I always get the question like, do you need to be sponsored? When even in the interview process, when HR has already asked that question right up front. But my question is for someone that is like less privileged and doesn't have that network, isn't born in the right neighborhood, hasn't gone to the best school or even had the right connections to get their first job. How do you make those networks and connections? What are some actionable steps to make those networks and connections?
That is that like the perfect transition point, Liz?
I see what I did there? See what I did there?
That was amazing. That was amazing. I have some opinions on the subject, but I think there's someone far more qualified than I am to be able to help you.
So David, thank you so much. And Xiao, yes, I asked you to ask that question in particular because that transitions us to our next segment where I am absolutely delighted to introduce to this group David Brazier. David Brazier is an intern with LinkedIn. He's from Tacoma, Washington, and is currently a rising senior in marketing at Virginia Tech. He has a background in marketing. He started his career as a marketing intern where he learned the ins and outs of the business. Engaging in social and professional organizations at his university enabled him to cultivate a wide range of skills and contacts to develop in his future roles. And now, as a global business organization intern at LinkedIn, David supports sales leaders and account managers in LinkedIn's talent business line. He enjoys the outdoors and is passionate about social impact and the development of young professionals. So I would like for you all to join me in welcoming to the conversation, David Brazier. David, thank you so much for joining us today. Oh, come off of mute.
There we go, unmuted. Liz,
okay.
Thanks so much, Ms. Thompson, for the introduction. And
Liz is fine.
I'm so happy to be here. I've been looking forward to sharing. And yes, for those of you that have asked questions about this, or I saw some other things in the chat earlier, I hope that I can answer as best as I can some of these things that you can do. And yes, with that being said, I have a couple of slides and some thoughts that I'd love to share with you all today. So feel free to, throw in the chat. You have questions, or if you see something you like or want more context on anything there. So just to kind of break down what I want to share with you all today, let's see here, is a little bit of my background, my journey, and then kind of talk about branding and how I utilized this idea of branding to really launch myself into these areas where I statistically or maybe wasn't as easily given the opportunities to end up where I am now. And then the last one, which I think is the thing that I hold on to the most, is how to stand out, and a couple of different things you can do that we'll look at practically on the platform and then in your individual networks as well. So kind of to just give you a little background on who I am. I am a Black and white, first generation student from a single parent household. I had no scholarships going into college. I actually am about to walk into a lot of student debt with loans. and that's a whole nother conversation. But this last figure here is my GPA actually after my freshman year of college. And not only was it my GPA after my freshman year of college, but it's actually my GPA when I got recruited for my internship at LinkedIn. And so to right off the bat kind of speak to like, how does LinkedIn, how does LinkedIn help, or what are some things that they're doing? They're helping people like me with not necessarily the educational background or the great skills and grades or the great grades, to intern there. And so, definitely try and get good grades. But I'll just speak to some of the interns out there who may identify with either this GPA or a couple of other things for as far as my background, and share these things really don't define you. And I've found that what I'll share later in the presentation really enabled me to kind of let this be not the end of my story. So to talk about branding here, Sheila Madden is my aunt, and she's an executive coach and has helped me incredibly in my young professional journey. And I want everyone to kind of just let this sink in for a second, and I'll read this quote. And it's, branding is finding the language that is authentic and real about who you are. So just let that settle for a second. Authentic and real about who you are. I think our brand and what that means a lot, right? But it carries so much more than we equate it with sometimes. Authentic and real. Let that be your platform. Let that be something that you start to think about and figure out in terms of what you want to do in your job, what you want to do in your career. This is just a little plug that I wanted to have in here to kind of get everyone's minds thinking about in terms of the rest of the presentation, because like I mentioned, it's a great platform. So this first point here, it's often said, it's all about who you know, network, which is totally true. And I am an advocate of that for sure. But more importantly, something I learned my sophomore year of college is it's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. And this is for a lot of different reasons, but the main one being you can know as many people and know so-and-so at this company and so-and-so at this company. But at the end of the day, when that person has a job offer that comes up internally and they can think of you rather than you just knowing them, like what opportunities does that create for you in the future? And so we'll look at a couple of different things that I've done to really make sure that others know who I am, and not necessarily, networking and just having a lot of people in my network. This next one here is about your brand lasting a lifetime. It's not just something that is highlighted in high school and college. Professionals and executives and people even on this call, I'm sure, are still developing and have a brand that they're working on. And so I mention this because it's so important to start it now. And I was taught and helped a ton in figuring this out. And that's why I'm sharing it with you all today. And then this last question, I want people to actually interact with. And so what are you known for in a professional setting or in a team environment? What do you bring to the table? I want everyone to throw in the chat right now what that is for you. Interns and everyone else on the call. Maybe I should pull up the chat.
Yeah, pull it up.
Yeah, just throw it in there. Are you a leader? Authenticity and collaboration. There we go. Positive attitude, storytelling. That's a powerful one. I'm going to talk about that, I think. Yes, problem solver. Keeping it real, determination, empathetic. Yes, love all the responses here. This is great. So now I want you to ask yourself, can someone tell these things by looking at your LinkedIn profile? Because ultimately, I think there are things that the platform and that your brand can really set as a foundation for if you can really highlight those things there, then man, the opportunities will come flowing in. And right, it's not just about LinkedIn. It's not just about digitally, but I think, when someone calls on, or when you get placed in a team, are people excited? Do they think, this person has a positivity and inclusivity on their mind when they're joining team settings? What will others think about you when you walk into the room in your professional environment, in your classrooms as students? I love that we as students get to determine who we want to be in these young stages, in these developmental settings, such as these cafe conversations, internships, being in university. Standing out is honestly, the only thing I was like, I think I can do this. And so I'm going to put in all of my eggs in this basket. Like, how do I stand out? I clearly didn't have the GPA to even make it through like a first round in a typical job application at certain companies. Most companies wouldn't even accept my like resume if my GPA wasn't a certain amount. And so standing out was something that I knew I had to do. And so for yourselves, ask the question, what are you a part of? What LinkedIn learnings, like others have mentioned, are you taking? What projects are you doing and throwing yourself in? How are you being innovative? How many people have you networked with at your dream companies, maybe? Standing out, you ask yourself, what are my strengths? What do I bring to group settings? I think it's one of those things that we hear from adults or those in front of us, or maybe further along in their journeys, like, you have a talent, you have a gift. And I really do like charge everyone and students and even other professionals here, like figure out those things and then capitalize on those. Like, how can I highlight on those things? How can I develop them into strong skills and then really implement them in the different communities and organizations that I'm a part of? Heading into a little bit more of a practical standpoint of standing out, I want everyone to throw in the chat, if you are a recruiter, who are you choosing? The person on the left or the right? Or you can annotate, whatever. I want to hear the responses though. Right. 100%. Michaela happens to be one of my fellow interns at LinkedIn, and she's awesome. But these are two people that are in the same year. They could study the same thing. And all because Michaela took the time to put all of her information, plug herself in a couple of different things like HBS, VVMP, and MLT-CP Fellow. Honestly, don't know what those acronyms mean, but it makes me curious, right? As a recruiter, like, how can I come to these profiles and then not choose Michaela? And so this is why leveraging the platform is so important. And this is what I did to get my job at LinkedIn. I was reached out to by a recruiter. I didn't even know it was a thing. I mean, like, yeah, it was just a crazy story for another time, but I was reached out to, and I think it's because I really leveraged the platform. And so now we'll look at a couple more things that you can do to set yourself apart and have a better angle when people are recruiting and reaching out to you as a young student looking for internships. So this is another fellow intern I'll highlight real quick. And I'll just preface, this may be just a little overwhelming. And this is not by any means what my profile looks like at all. But I think this is the goal, right? If you can implement all of the features and the skills and endorsements and have the activity here and the about section that tells people about who you are, it really sets you up to stand out amongst other people. I definitely encourage everyone to do this with each other, hold each other accountable, work on this together. Engagement here is super, super important. I know that Lisa put in the chat earlier and David mentioned there are some opportunities for us as LinkedIn employees to share some premium subscriptions. And I actually was going to plug that. I would love to share some as well and have some fellow interns that actually have some left over. And so if that's something you're looking to grow in your profile and you think you would benefit from, LinkedIn learning sessions that talk from, like how to code to how to have a sales development conversation to how to work on your Apple Watch, like there's a ton there and I love it. But if you think you could benefit from a subscription there, please reach out to Liz to reach out to us, or you can totally reach out to me. I'll put my LinkedIn I have my LinkedIn on the last slide for you to individually connect and reach out as well. And then with the last practical one here, I want to talk about the difference between your profile and your resume. So your resume is going to really be something that's, your resume is looked at for on average 7 seconds by a recruiter. And so very important for sure. But I think your LinkedIn can tell so much more because it goes into your skills, your projects, your interests. And, I was talking with Dawn, who's on the cafe team, about what she looks at even when she's recruiting and whatnot. And she said LinkedIn is something that she highlights and looks at a lot. And so connecting with professionals, interacting, having activity around certain industries and things you want to be involved in are super important. And then another thing that's great about your LinkedIn is other people can speak to your strengths, whereas a resume doesn't necessarily. You can have people endorse you for skills like I had just shown here on Skylar's profile. He's been endorsed 17 times for public speaking, 16 for entrepreneurship. And so those things, when others are saying them about you, speak a little more volume than sometimes when we share about them ourselves. And then let's see here. This is my last slide for you guys to keep it nice and simple. My final thoughts. Grabbing some water because I'm really passionate about these things and want to be able to speak to them well. But network when it's not necessary. This is something that someone taught me, and because I did these things, I think opportunities opened up. I've interviewed at places that I didn't necessarily want to work at, and I've submitted job applications kind of to just get into the habit of doing it. And I think these things helped me and really propelled me for when, the time came for me to have that conversation with the LinkedIn recruiter or have that interview. I was able to take those skills that I had learned prior and really implement them in a way that I was like, I got this. Like, I've had the experience. I didn't necessarily need to do these things, but because I was networking so early on, it really helped me in the future. This next one is to be curious. And David actually got to talk, David Cohen, who just spoke with everyone, got to talk with the interns earlier this summer about a lot of different topics, but being curious was something that he plugged. And as I take a step back from my internship and reflect on the entire process, being curious is by far the number one skill, strength thing that has helped me learn, grow, and develop insanely in ways this summer. And it's for the reason that when you're curious, you learn. And when you learn, you're able to understand so much more. And when you understand more, you're able to implement and react in an authentic way and be able to speak to so many different things. And so whether it's being curious about the thing that the client said during the call that you got to shadow, or the thing that your program manager was sharing with you about and feedback and asking more questions, being curious is something that I've forced myself to do. If you have an opportunity as a student and intern, totally just come up with a question and obviously try and make it be something worthwhile. But being curious really sets you up, because I think a lot of our generation presumes to know a lot. And I think there's so much for us to learn, for myself to learn, that I found being curious is something that has set me apart and given me so many opportunities. The next one here is to dream big, to have goals. I mean, I mentioned this earlier, but like truly find what you're passionate about. If you're interested in a company or an organization, whether it's the NBA, corporate, or Spotify, or Gucci, or you name it. I mean, network now. Find someone. This is what I was going to say. When we're kids and we're growing up, people always ask us, like, who do you want to be? And we're not in the workforce yet. Like, we're not even to the age where we can really recognize where those jobs are. And so for me, like being at LinkedIn, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a complete playground of different things that I would love to do. And something that someone advised me to do when I was like a freshman or sophomore, they said, look at these companies that you can align with their mission and values, and literally go find a position or a job at that company that you think is interesting, and like, let that be a starting point. I know it's kind of weird to just like have something be a little interesting and to just hop on it, but I think it really sets us up in the long run, students and interns, to be able to pivot from there and to have at least some idea. And that leads me to my last point, and that's to lead with passion and supplement with skill. And basically this looks like what I had just previously mentioned, finding something that you can do that doesn't feel like work. Something that I've loved about interning with LinkedIn this summer, it's funny, I actually work in the search and staffing org of the business, but I found that the mission and the values I align with so much that it makes working for the company and like contributing to work something that I truly enjoy and makes me want to stay around. And I know that that's possible in other companies. I know that's possible in other organizations. I hear a lot from professors and even older professionals like, nah, chase the money, like go for the money. Everybody says to chase your passion, but I'm telling you, and I don't even know if people on this call would agree with me, but please, please, please chase your passion. In the long run, it's going to benefit you so much. You're going to contribute and be so much more productive than those who are just in it for a paycheck. And if you think, or you're maybe thinking to yourself, what I'm passionate about, I can't do that job or I won't make enough money. There are opportunities for you, I promise, if you search and network and connect with others to see that those things that you're passionate about really can be amazing opportunities and lucrative as well. These are all of my thoughts for you all today. Thank you so much for letting me share. This is just a QR code for my LinkedIn if you'd like to connect with me. And if you have any questions about your profile or other things at LinkedIn even, I'm more than happy to talk with them on an individual level or for anyone who'd like to hear. And I just want to thank the Cafe Group and Miss Liz and Dawn for letting me share today. So thank you all.
David, are you kidding me? The biggest no-brainer in the history of Cafe Conversations was having you present today. Thank you so much, David. And if you can do a stop screen share, I'm going to ask the other Davids. I'm surrounded by amazing Davids today. I'm going to ask the other David to come back on because we did get more questions. Right now is blowing up with love for you, David Brazier, and your presentation. But I do want to ask Francine Shalunas to the stage because she had a really interesting question about the fact that not all interns are young. So Francine, can you ask your question?
I simply asked that based on everything I've heard today, there's a lot of notoriety about the fact that many of the seniors now are moving into the job market and they're being welcomed for the most part. So I was asking, what, if any, words of wisdom did you have for those who are now in the mission phase of their lives and are looking to do some great things, some new great things perhaps?
And I happen to know Francine, who is my mentor of the last 30 plus years. And when she talks about in the mission phase of her life, that's been for the last many, many, many years, my friend. So David, any words of wisdom for our more experienced members in the audience?
DC, I think that's you, right?
Is that me? Is that me? I mean, you know, now everybody understands why I went first, because I didn't want to follow David Brazier's
Very smart, my friend.
Can't follow that guy. David, fantastic work. Thank you for that presentation. Francine, what a great question. And I think it's a hard one for me to answer. I think because I have a bias around the word intern, that I think about an intern as someone who's currently, you know, a full-time student or part-time student. But I probably should like address my own bias. And I think that, you know, I wrote a post on LinkedIn a long time ago, which I always share it with our interns at LinkedIn. And the post is called, "How Wide is Your Pyramid?" And the idea behind it is that I think that people, when they start their careers, they have a very kind of many people have a kind of a tunnel vision. Hey, I want to do this thing and I want to rise as fast as possible in my career. And I actually believe that that's not the right approach for most people. Most people don't really know what they want to do, especially when they're in their early 20s. I'm not in my early 20s anymore, and I still don't know what I want to do. And so what I tell people is, you know, build a very wide kind of base, because pyramids can only be as tall as they are wide. And if you build a very narrow base of skills, then inevitably you can only build so tall a pyramid. And if your pyramid is your career, then over time that becomes harder to do. But there's no time component associated with building that base. And so, I made a huge career change when I was 35 years old. My guess is I will make another huge career change in my late 40s or early 50s, and I'll probably have another one down the road. And I think that's going to become more normal. And I think, to your point around finding a receptive audience and people who are looking for, the most important skills right now, the most in-demand skills are actually soft skills. It's collaborating well, communicating effectively, having a growth mindset, being resilient. We see those skills pop up more than any other skills in job descriptions. And those are timeless skills. They don't require going back to university to get those skills. And so, what I would say is I think it's an unlimited opportunity, especially in a job market that really needs a lot of talent and probably a lot of the skills that you bring to the table. So whether that's an internship or whether that's part-time or full-time work, I think that's just that's a bias that a lot of people are going to have to get their heads around.
I agree, David. That's a whole new paradigm, is that interns and internships are not reserved for young, but just for the young at heart. Francine, thank you so much for that question. I'm going to ask Aaron Smoot to join us on screen and ask the question that you asked in the chat box, Aaron.
Awesome. First, I want to thank both Davids for giving us such a rich content and such a rich discussion. I really appreciate everything that you've really touched on. So this question is for David B. So what tips or tricks on networking do you have for any of our interns on this call?
Yes, for sure. A lot. I think to kind of just start off, when you send connection requests with people on LinkedIn, send a note. I had someone reach out to me actually yesterday that I happened to accept the request kind of from seeing they're at the same university as me. And then they sent me a message after and they're like, hey, I'm interested about this. But what I told them to do was next time, send that note. You have the ability to send a note when you send a connection request with someone. And it really helps people to know, and you're more likely statistically to get accepted for a connection if you're sending a note with it. And so I'll do that. Look at people's profiles. Don't be scared that it sends a notification to them. Use that one feature of LinkedIn that honestly is really unique and no other platform really does that, with notifying people that so-and-so viewed your profile. Use that to your advantage. If you're a student that's going to a job fair, or you just connected with a recruiter, follow up. It's totally fine to look at their profile. I'd also say, really make sure that your profile has all-star status. There's some prompts and some things on LinkedIn where you go in and it tells you you're at all-star status, or you're at intermediate, or you're a beginner. Make sure that it's fully filled out, and then ask people to endorse you. If you're a part of a school chat on maybe a social organization or the group of interns here or other people that can advocate for you, have them go in and endorse you for certain skills and things that you're doing. The last one to wrap up is reach out to people, network. I know I kind of spoke to the connection requests aspect earlier, but just be curious. Network with people who are alumni. That's a great way I connect with others for different companies and organizations that I'm interested in. I'll literally go into LinkedIn, type in Virginia Tech, Apple, and then it literally pulls up everybody at Virginia, that went to Virginia Tech that works at Apple. I just always use Apple as just a regular one. But those are a couple of things off the top of my head. There are also some great creators on the platform who literally produce content like this and different skills and tips that you can be doing. And so follow them, have them in your network, even engage with them, because they're putting out stuff that you can do daily to make yourself stand out.
I'll add one thing, if I may. David, great answer. And Aaron, thanks for the question. The only other thing that I'd add, in addition to all of David's ideas, is use your network. And if you know that you have a connection in common, if you see on LinkedIn, hey, this is somebody I'd like to network with, and they're a second degree connection, that means that you both share a connection in common. You're just 1 degree removed from that person. And so I think it's a great opportunity to ask that mutual connection to introduce you to that person. Because everybody, if I get a note from someone who I know and trust, and they say, hey, you really need to, do you mind if I introduce you to Aaron? You really need to meet him. I am 100 times more likely to say yes than someone who just finds me cold out of the blue.
That's such a good tip. Aaron, thank you so much. I'm going to ask one final question of you both. And this was a question that we got from a number of people at the top of the hour. And that was David Cohen, in relationship to your statistics around 440% increase in the number of remote working opportunities and things like that. A number of people were asking us, isn't this going to potentially compromise people's abilities to create social skills, to create those social networks that are so important? How do you two think about that? I mean, it's one thing to build a set of skills over Zoom. I mean, we still have to be respectful and all of that, but it's a whole other thing to understand workplace dynamics and to understand how to effectively communicate in a group where you're actually with them and seeing them. How do you think about this new environment and what that means for our social skill development?
Yes, it is such a good question. The answer is nobody really knows, I don't think. But there are a lot of hypotheses for sure. You know, I think the reason why you've seen so many big companies go back and forth on whether or not they're going to allow people to work remotely is because they're trying to figure out the answer to this question. You know, I think a lot of executives believe that it's hard to maintain the same level of productivity when nobody's in the same room together and people don't get to collaborate around a conference room table. And certainly, you know, I haven't been in a room with my colleagues in a year and a half, you know, and I miss the environment where we can kind of, you know, we can brainstorm and we can interrupt each other and we can, you know, we can volley over the table back and forth. It doesn't work that way on Zoom, you know, and it's hard, right? And then I think about, you know, David Brazier and I have never met face to face. There are people on my leadership team, I have never met them personally.
David, that's so true. I met my team for the first time like a month ago, several members of my team, and I realized some were tall, and it was just amazing to even realize that.
It's incredible. I've never met Ami from Braven, and I sit on her board of directors in Chicago. Like these are mind-blowing times that we're in right now. And so it remains to be seen, like, is this going to be the permanent state? What are the trade-offs that we're going to have to try and address? You know, these are really strange kind of questions, and we've never had to ask them before. Right. During the last global pandemic, you know, the Spanish flu, there was no Zoom, and like telephones weren't even all that common in the workplace. And so, you know, what did they do? I have no idea. But we've got different technology now. Certainly, it's a lot better than it was before. I'll tell you one like fascinating anecdote. We held a customer conference in the middle of the pandemic, and we sent everybody Oculus headsets, and we had the meeting in virtual reality. So imagine everyone is like in this virtual reality room. We're all wearing Oculus headsets and we're interacting with each other. Yeah. It was super disorienting. It was really, really fascinating. And I was like, okay, I could do this maybe every once in a while, but if you think that this is going to be my reality, you can forget about that. I'm going back to Zoom after this.
And yet, David, I wonder if we would go back 10 years and say to yourself 10 years ago, we want you to get ready for an environment where you never even get to meet in person the people that you would hire, where you never would get to shake the hands of the employees you would call your most valuable employees. And your meetings would be done all from the screen with people from all around the globe. I wonder, would you have said, oh, sign me up for that?
But from the person who, you know, my first job was, I went to O'Hare Airport on Sunday night, got on an airplane, flew to visit my customers, stayed there until Friday night, and flew home with no technology, by the way. I had no cell phone, I had no laptop, I had nothing. Like, that's what I knew about business. So yeah, to go back 10 years, I mean, maybe even 5 years.
5 years.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, our young people today don't even know a world without cell phones or, Hulu, for crying out loud. So David Brazier, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? What about the social interaction component of everything?
I mean, I don't think I can talk DC's answer, but I think to add on, there's just an opportunity to be innovative. I think even with like the social interaction aspect of things, there's a benefit, as weird as it sounds, to being in a digital atmosphere. This means that everyone is on platforms like LinkedIn more. Everyone is on other platforms where you can showcase different strengths and different talents. And so I think, sure, there's definitely a trade-off, but there's also some good things I think that will come from it. And yeah, I think even as an intern in my experience at LinkedIn, I've met one of them in person by happen chance. We're from the same place, but I mean, I speak with them daily, like a pod of us are connecting daily, and a lot of them so much more. And so it's really an opportunity to work on those skills. And I think the virtual platform won't be going away. And so something that we're going to have to adapt to and then flex back into getting those social skills even better once we get back into person one day. So that's those are just a couple of things that I think of there.
David, you are awesome. So this is the point in time where I ask for everyone to click your videos back on. Let's all come back and be in community with each other. And I've got to say, you guys, I'm looking at the number of participants. We have virtually kept everyone that started off this conversation with us, and I'm delighted to still have you all with us. I can't thank David Cohen and David Brazier enough for being with us today. It was the best conversation. Both Davids, thank you for sharing such relevant and intriguing information. Thank you for sharing your time and your talents with us. I want to thank all of our audience participants that asked questions, and even those that we didn't get to call on to ask their questions in person. Thank you for popping them in the chat box. Thank you for your support of David Brazier and all of our interns. It is so important that we support them and what it is that they're doing at this stage in their lives. Thank you to all the employers that provide these incredible internship opportunities, and I would encourage more to do so. I want to thank my team at the Cafe Group, in particular, Dawn Francis Reese, who is our coordinator of these Cafe Conversations. Dawn, thank you so much. I want to thank the rest of our entire Cafe Group team. You all make all the difference in the work that we do. And I want to just say a couple final words. David's optimism, David Brazier's optimism, as we're talking about, oh, I can't imagine being virtual for the rest of our lives. And David pops in and says, get over it, people. By the way, there's some advantages to this. Highlights and showcases the power of diversity, right? Sometimes we think and only ascribe diversity to race and ethnicity. It is truly the diversity of thought. Having young people be part of your team will enhance your thought processes in ways that you never can imagine, because our brains are just not wired that way. Their brains are wired in a completely different way. It just comes from the times that they were born and raised in. They think differently. Please consider bringing young people into your families, into your teams, into your businesses, because the way that they think is going to be what propels us forward. The same goes for Xiao Mei, who said, I struggle because people think that I'm foreign born and I'm born right here in America. Her life experience and others like that will help us think more creatively about the experiences we want to have collectively as a nation. Folks, we are on the brink of change unlike that we have seen in the past. Embrace diversity in all of its many forms. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We hope to see, David Cohen, before we go, I think what we have right now is a LinkedIn refresher course in the making for the people that are part of this call. There were so many tips and things that you all surfaced today. By show of hands, who would like a LinkedIn refresher course and how to update your profiles and all the many different assets available? Yeah, we got a lot of hands raised here. So can you hook us up with that, David? Can you
Love
help
it.
us figure that out?
We are going to, David Brazier and I are going to go and figure that out right after we get off of this call.
Love it. So people, stay tuned for a LinkedIn refresher course coming to you, compliments of LinkedIn and the Cafe Group. And the very last thing that I would like to do is take a picture. We always like to take pictures of this beautiful community. So on the count of 3, I'm going to ask for everybody to say cheese. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, cheese. Cheese. And since there's so many of you, I got to go over to the second screen. Here we go. Say cheese. 1, 2, 3, cheese. Cheese. Fantastic. You all are amazing. Thank you so much, Horace. Glad that you could join us. Wendy, love having you. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we will see you soon. Bye.
God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lester. Lovely having you as always.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you,
David.
Liz. The group was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Christine. Bye, Abby. We love you. Francine, I love you so much. Susan, you were blowing up the chat box. Thank you. Bye, everybody. Lenora, thank you so much.
Made my day.
Oh my gosh, Cheryl, I love you, girl.
Wonderful.
You. Thank you, David and David. I don't even have the words to thank you all for that. That had to be the most engaging cafe conversation we have ever had. Thank you so much.
So glad to hear it. Thank you, Liz. It was an honor. And the way that you make people feel is like incredible. Incredible. You have like an amazing superpower about like just exuding love and inspiration.
David, thank you so much. I meant what I said about this LinkedIn kind of refresher course. I'm sure that you all offer these, online and all of that. But for the people on this call, to be able to say, let's continue in our community of learning and be able to offer something where they can come and we can learn together. Is that possible? Could we do something like that?
There's nothing that's jumping to mind, but interestingly, Ami hit me in the chat and she said Lisa has an idea.
So I'm actually a Rock Your Profile ambassador, but I don't know if I'd want to teach the course. But I would like to line up someone that's a lot more seasoned, and we can do a Rock Your Profile course and set that up for Cafe.
There you
Lisa,
go.
you rock, girl. Yes. Can we
put on and we'll figure out some logistic stuff and then work on who can do the course. I could take a stab in it, but I prefer someone more seasoned with this group.
That is amazing. So Lisa, Dawn, because you've been working with Dawn, and Taylor Kutu, who's also on the screen here. I'm going to ask you to work with the two of them so that we can, in short order, advertise that to that amazing group of people that was just on the screen.
Awesome. Liz, Ami also offered up the Braven LinkedIn course. So I don't even know what that is, but
I didn't know there was one. Okay, so maybe we need to also, so that could be something special that we offer to our interns.
That could be in the same line as Rock Your Profile.
Yeah. Aaron, I'm going to ask you, Lou, can you connect Aaron and Ami and mention that she offered this and help us understand what that is, because that may be something that would be perfect for the interns. And then the Rock Your Profile, Lisa, is something I would like to offer to the broader audience that was with us today. All right, people. I'm sending you giant hugs through cyberspace. Thank you so much, Liz. David, you are amazing. I don't know what you're doing next summer. I'm just saying. Just saying. Liz at thecafe.org.
I love it.
All right, everybody. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay. Bye, Cafe Group. I love y'all. Thank you so much. See ya.